Hey, welcome to the Tales of the Gearhead podcast. This is brought to you by Cornwell Tools. They're the choice of professionals since 1919. Yeah, 1919. A little bit of quick math work. That's over 100 years of building top quality tools. I'm your host, Stacey David. All right, let's turn the key and get rolling. All right, this question comes from Lee, and Lee says, hey, I have a 72 CJ5, and I can't find a winch bumper for the front. Can you tell me a company that would carry something like that? Well, first of all, 72 CJ5, man, that's an awesome rig, Lee. Always been a fan of the CJ5s. We did one on the show last year. Man, I tell you what, those things have gotten collectible. If you have one that's uncut, which it kind of sounds like this one is. Anyway, as far as a winch bumper, yeah, those can be kind of hard to find because everybody's doing newer stuff. But check out Four Wheel Parts Wholesaler. They've got a lot of Jeep parts. Check out Quadratech. They carry a lot of bumpers and Jeep parts. And if you just need original parts for that Jeep, Crown Automotive has a lot of, bearings and parts, and they might even have a winch bumper there as well. Also, you can check out companies like Warren. I know Warren had winch bumpers for those CJs for a long time. Now, they may not be listed in their catalogs or something like that, but I bet they still have them. Super Winch makes a good product, and so does Patriot. Any of those you can't go wrong with. I also recommend about an 8,000, 9,000 pound winch. Anything more than that on a little CJ, you don't need it. And you'll end up just pulling the Jeep in half. Also, if you're looking to get into a winch like that, for years I used the winch cable. That's all you had. But man, if you have a choice, go with the synthetic rope, man. It really is nice. And I prefer it to the cable because the cable eventually starts to fray, starts to become a problem. But that synthetic rope is really nice, especially if you don't use your winch a lot. It's just nice. It's always there ready, and it lasts a long time. So anyway, I hope that helps you, Lee. Good luck on that Jeep, man. All right, I've got a question here from Tim. Tim is saying, hey, Stacey, a couple seasons back, you painted an old military vehicle using an electric spray gun and a specific brand of paint. He says, I've been trying to find out what you used and what type of paint that was. He said, that kind of paint job is exactly what I'm wanting to do. Any help you can give would be great. Well, Tim, I tell you what, the reason I did that, it was to show an option for a cheap paint job, but I don't really recommend using an electric spray gun if you want a really high quality paint job. It's just the wrong tool for the wrong job. Now, let me kind of go into this a little bit. Basically, to answer your question, the gun that I used was a Wagner. You can pick them up at Home Depot. You can rent them at Home Depot. And they're really made for painting fences and porches and shooting, heavy latexes and stains and that kind of thing. An electric spray gun, they just don't have the proper atomization to do quality automotive paints, your urethanes and your metallics and stuff. What this means is the droplets are big. Let me go through a little bit of the paint technology here. When your paint is in a can, it's just a big solid mass of liquid. To shoot it properly, you almost have to turn it into a mist, kind of like the way the gasoline goes in your engine when it's going into the combustion chamber. And so it needs to be atomized, and the finer the atomization, the finer the paint job, the finer the paint lays down. So think of droplets, microscopic droplets coming out of the spray gun. Bigger those droplets are, the more clunky the paint looks, the more susceptible it is to running, the more susceptible it is to splotching. The more the metallics will clump up, all kinds of stuff. So a high-quality spray gun, air spray gun, like a SATA gun or DeVilbiss or something like that, they have extremely fine tips. Their whole thing is atomization of the actual paint. And that's why you get these great paint jobs coming right out of the gun. An airless will not do that. So what you usually shoot with an airless is a big, thick enamel, or something like that. Now, all that being said, that was kind of the point. You can throw something on there if you're going to paint a tractor or if you're going to paint, a go-kart or something like that. Yeah, you can lay the paint on there with an airless gun and it'll look okay. But I just want to make sure that you're really clear on that. If you're looking at that, like I said, you can rent these guns, you can buy them. But when you start getting into some of these urethanes that you have to mix a hardener with, man, if you don't get that gun clean, you might as well just throw that gun away. And your electric guns are really susceptible to that. People have been asking me if you can actually do a paint job on a car with a roller or using just old school enamels. And you can, but the problem is by the time you put all that paint on there and then sand it and buff it off, you've got so much labor in the paint job. You might be into the paint job for a couple $100 in materials, but you've spent 3 weeks sanding and buffing it and then reapplying paint to try to get any kind of a finish, and you still end up with an enamel paint job. So I don't really recommend it. I think spending the money to get a good paint and getting the proper equipment, you're far farther ahead in doing your paint job. That's just my take on that. That's what we did on the show. That's why we did it, just to show an alternative for somebody that's doing something that is just an old military vehicle or a tractor or something like that. So hopefully, Tim, that gives you some information. Get out there, paint some stuff, man. Send some pictures and see how you did. Okay, this next question comes from Giovanni. He says, hey, Stacey, how many cars would you consider to be too many? You're asking the wrong guy, Giovanni, I'm telling you. He goes on to say, I'm 30 years old. I picked up all of my dream projects while they were still obtainable and figured that I would fix them up a little by little and enjoy them in the process. Okay, first of all, the fact that you did this and you're only 30 years old is awesome. The problem here is you've got a lot of projects and probably a 30-year-old's income, which a lot of time is not conducive to big projects. He's got two 69 Cougars. That's nice. A 72 split bumper Camaro. My gosh, these are like my cars there. He has two 96 Impala SS's. He has a 56 Chevy short bed truck. He's got a 70 Chevelle. He's got an 84 Corvette and a 63 Pro Street Chrysler 300. Well, first of all, hats off to you, Giovanni. You got a Ford, Chevy, Dodge here. You got some cars. You got some trucks. You got a nice representation of hot rod stuff here. You don't tell me what kind of shape they're in. You do say that they're projects. Here is what I would say. You know, like I said, there's a lot going on here, and I think this is a great question. But to get serious on this, you know, one problem that I see a lot is that we can tend as car people just to keep picking up projects with the good intentions that eventually we're going to get to them. And pretty soon you have 120 years worth of projects and only a few years to do them. I don't know if they're sitting outside. I don't know if you're in a garage, but that's a lot of vehicles to have in a garage, so they're probably outside. As you know, if the weather's bad, these vehicles will start to deteriorate pretty quickly. And there's a tipping point where they start to deteriorate more quickly than they're appreciating. So basically, they're turning into junk. What I suggest is instead of trying to get all of your dream vehicles first and then work through them, I would go for the one that you want the most right now, and the one that you would like to be enjoying and driving right now. People's tastes change over the years of cars they like and don't like. So I would get rid of the ones that you're not going to do anything with for a long time and take all that time and focus and money from those other vehicles and focus on that one vehicle right now and finish it and get it to where you're enjoying it. And then once you're done with it, you can either keep it and start a collection, or you can sell it and go on to the next vehicle. But that way you have a nice running vehicle that doesn't become a eyesore to the neighborhood or that thing that's never running that you can enjoy with your wife or your kids. And you have something that you can enjoy, you can work on, and it's not just a pain in your backside. Now, I know as soon as I say this, a lot of guys are like, yeah, but I picked these up while they were affordable, and you actually say that. You know, the values of things change, and they go back and forth. And right now, prices are kind of high on things. And, you can't really tell, though, what is going to be valuable and what is not. I'm looking down your list here, and probably your most valuable vehicles right now today is that 72 split bumper Camaro and the 70 Chevelle. The 56 Chevy short bed truck, those are desirable. But right now, 69 Cougars aren't bringing a lot of money. Your Pro Street vehicles, people not really looking at those as much. But that's today. See, that could change tomorrow. So what you want to do is get the vehicles you like, focus on one or two, and get them done. And don't worry about what something's going to cost or not being able to afford something when you're older or whatever. You can't play in the future like that because you don't know what it's like. Now, granted, there have been times, I had chances to buy Ferraris, back in the 80s for nothing. Yeah, well, at the time it was something, but by today's prices, it was nothing. But nobody wanted them at that point. Now they're worth a lot of money. So that's one of those things where you just, you look at it and sometimes you hit the right vehicle and other times you don't. But you can't try to plan ahead like that because what happens, Giovanni, and I've seen this many, many times, is eventually the vehicles start owning you. You don't own the vehicles. They're dictating your life. They dictate your income. They dictate your focus. They dictate all of your waking moments and thoughts. And so you're not spending time with friends and family. You're not spending time at work like you should. You're not focusing on other things. And that starts a really bad downward spiral that nobody likes to talk about. We see it happening as these vehicles come for sale at some of these auctions. People are just like, I just want to get rid of this thing. It's been dominating my life, and they end up hating the cars. So I don't want that to happen to you. Long answer there. There's a lot going into this. If they're just something, if they're all running and fun, you can hold on to them. But my suggestion would be focus on the one that you really want right now today. Get rid of the others. Put your time and money into that other one. You'll be much happier down the road as you're driving that car. And then you're thinking toward the next one that you might want to get. I hope that helps you, man. Good luck to you. When the subject of tools comes up in the shop, people will all talk about their sockets and their wrenches, but then we start to get into the subject of exotic tools. These are your bodyworking tools, and these are your flangers, and all these special tools. And people are like, where do you get those? Because you're not going to find those at Home Depot, and you're not going to find them at the local hardware store. And that is where Cornwell comes in. They have a catalog that's like the old phone books. You remember the phone books? Well, that's a Cornwell catalog. And these guys will bring the tools right to you. Once you start to get into that world, and once you start to see what's out there, you'll be like, what have I been doing messing around with the stuff that I find locally? One of the cool things about a company like Cornwell is that they do have warranties, and they have guys right on the trucks that can really talk to you about the tools and steer you in the right direction. So if you're really into your projects and you're into doing things right with good tools, check out Cornwell. Okay, my next question comes from Robert. And his question is very short and concise. It's, how hard is it to replace a complete wiring harness in a 70 Chevelle SS with gauges and automatic? Can you send tips? All right, Robert, come on, man. I gotta have more information than this. What is that? This kind of question, this is like asking me to describe the color red, man. I need more information. How hard is it? How hard is it for me? How hard is it for you? What kind of tools do you have? All kinds of stuff. When you send questions in, make sure that you give me as much information as you can, because it always helps in my answer, because knowing what to give you back. So, with that being said, let's just start, Robert, at the very beginning, and let me just walk you through what it takes to replace a complete wiring harness. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a 70 Chevelle SS with gauges and automatic. That kind of stuff doesn't really matter because that's all going to be involved in the harness. Okay, the first thing that you need to do when you realize you're going to do a wiring harness is you got to have room to lay out the new harness. That's the very first thing you do. Don't start taking wires off or unplugging headlights yet. You need to open up the box of the new harness. Let's say it's a painless unit. You need to lay it out on the floor. If you don't have enough room in the shop, say you're in a one-bay garage, lay the harness out over the top of the vehicle. The reason you do this is this allows you to run all of the wires in the proper place. Because in the harness, some of these you're going to move around. Now, I know that might sound confusing, so we're going to get more into this. There's basically about 3 main areas in the wiring on a vehicle. There's under the hood, and that breaks down into little sub-assemblies like headlights, motor, wiper motor, those kind of things that are under the hood. So you have the under the hood area. Then you have the interior area. That's everything inside the cab of the car or truck. And then you have the rear area or the trunk area. And those are basically the 3 main areas. And like I said, each one of those will break down into little sub-assemblies. So what you do when you first lay out your harness is you decide, okay, based on the location of my fuel tank, does my sending unit wire go to the trunk or does it go to the cab? You see what I'm saying? If you have your windshield wiper control under the dash, or is it out in the engine compartment? Because the wiring will have to be run and routed properly. So this is why you lay out the harness, and you get everything kind of laid out into its sub-assemblies on how it's going to go. Now, once you have that laid out, you're ready to move on to the car, and you need to remove the old wiring harness. Now, that sounds really easy, but if you've ever just sat in a car, you realize there's some things in the way, like a steering wheel and a seat. And sometimes carpeting, and sometimes a complete dash assembly, and an air conditioning unit, and some of these things. So you need to start disassembling the car. Now, the trick is to not disassemble any more than you have to. You don't have to completely gut the car, and you don't have to completely disassemble it. But you do need to get parts out of the way so you can get up under the dash. So generally, you got to pull out the front seats and the rear seats. You'll have to pull off probably the sill plates that run down along the sides, because that's where wiring runs down the body and the sides. And then you'll have to get up under the dash, and you'll have to pull your gauges out. The gauge cluster or the whole gauge bezel. You probably have to pull your glove box out so you can get into where all of those assemblies are. Then in the trunk, you'll need to disassemble whatever to get to your tail light plugs and everything. And then you pull out your old harness. And then once you get your old harness out, you lay it out, and then you compare it to your new harness, because there might be some plugs that you have to reuse that are very unique for your car. For example, like my 67 Cougar, the V8 Interceptor, the tail light receptacles on the 67 Cougar are very unique, and they're specific to Cougar only. So you're not going to buy those just anywhere, except, maybe at West Coast Classic Cougars. But if you don't have to buy those, you can just splice into your originals into the new harness and use the original plugs. So there will be some of that. So you don't want to just throw the old harness away. So set your old harness off to the side, and then you start putting your new harness in. Now, generally, I start under the dash, because the block that goes through the firewall is the first thing that I like to mount. Whether it's a block that goes in there or whether it goes through a grommet, whichever way your vehicle goes, that's kind of the first thing, and then I assemble out from there. So then I'll take my assemblies that go up to my gauges and run those up to the gauge area. I'll take the part that goes to the ignition switch. I'll take the part that goes to the steering column, part that goes to the air conditioning or heaters, part that goes to the radio. These are all the sub-assemblies that I was talking about. And I'll lay each one of those out and just kind of octopus them out to their area and deal with one at a time. Once you get your block in, your fuse block, then, run over to your steering column, make your connections there. Run up to your gauges, make your connections there. Heating system, on and on and on, and do your interior. Then run your wires back into your trunk area. Same thing. Make all your connections to everything electrical back there. Then go up under the hood, and this is going to be hooking up to all of your motor parts. This is going to be your alternator, your air conditioning system, whatever electronics you have under the hood. an ECM, computer for the motor. All that needs to be hooked up, and then work your way all the way out to the headlights. Now, that's just the stock wiring harness. If you've added any accessories at all, I'm talking about aftermarket gauges. I'm talking about aftermarket stereo. I'm talking about, a vintage air system. Anything that is aftermarket or accessory, well, you're going to have to wire those appropriately. For example, one thing that a lot of us use under the hood is MSD ignition boxes, or any other brand. It doesn't have to be MSD. Any ignition box that will have to be hooked up with the wiring harness. So whatever splicing you may have done to the original harness that you pulled out, now that has to be rewired into the new wiring harness. Now, this is one of the main reasons I recommend using a top quality aftermarket harness. I talk about painless all the time, and they're really good for this reason. They set their harnesses up to work with all of these aftermarket accessories. They have the wires all set up and ready to go to hook right into an MSD box. They have the wiring set up to change your ignition system. If you want to upgrade to a push-button ignition, you can do that. That's why these aftermarket harnesses are so good without all this crazy splicing. Any modern aftermarket wiring harness will have this, not just painless. But they will actually have written right on the wire where it goes. So you can follow, you'll see which end goes where, and it's written right on the wire, tail lights, left, that kind of thing. That is really nice. Now, sometimes that's hard to see, so you might need a little magnifying glass and some light, because some of those wires, you have to kind of follow them and kind of read them. But there's also a really nice manual that goes with it. But anyway, so there's what you're looking at. It's labor intensive. It takes time. You kind of have to enjoy those detailed, tedious things. I do. I enjoy wiring. So to me, it's not that bad. It just takes time. You do have to take your time. And please, as you're doing it, take the time to route the wire nice and clean and wire tie it or put it in looms so the wiring looks professional. Listen, when I get up under a car, one of the first things I look at is the wiring and the plumbing, because that's where I'll be able to tell if the guy was very detail-oriented when he built the vehicle. And I know that if he was detail-oriented in that, which nobody cares about, I probably don't have to worry about him doing the paint and the motor and stuff right. Because, if the guy's detailed on wiring, you can pretty much figure he's going to be detailed on the other bigger stuff. Man, I hope that helps you out. I encourage people to do their own wiring because, listen, if you go to a shop, you're talking about $5,000 or so for somebody to rewire your car. It could be more than that, just depending on what you're adding or subtracting. I mean, it becomes very hour and labor intensive, but you'll save yourself a lot of money and you'll really understand your car once you do that. Now you'll be able to jump in there and wire stuff up, add accessories, add lights, any kind of thing. So I strongly recommend that you do it yourself, but take your time. If you have any questions, if you're using a painless kit, they have a hotline you can call in. There's really no problems that they haven't dealt with before. So good luck to you, Robert. Get that thing wired up and enjoy it, man. All right, that's it for today. Once again, we're brought to you by Cornwell Tools. Have a great day and get out there and work on something.